Hello everyone. So in today's lecture we have module 5 which talks about distinction between development and sustainable development. So we will see what is the difference between these two terms, and this is under the course of UN SDGs. So let's define development term. So the term development appeared before the term sustainable development. Of course, it came first and initially referred to creating material wealth to meet basic human needs. So you can see over here there is this phrase, creating material wealth to meet basic human needs. That was the actually leading premise for the term development. Well, and it has actually evolved over a long period of time. So we'll see like what came later. So the second thing what happened after this, after World War II, the concept of development was expanded to refer to the economic growth of sectors across the economy. So if you see, this economy was divided into different sectors, and the overall economic growth of those sectors, that became the actually meaning behind the term development. Attention was paid to the economic structure and focus was put on industries that spearheaded the economy. So economy, if you see, even in today's time also, like as we see, economy is mostly driven by the industry, the various units, corporations, and organizations which work for monetary benefit, work for actually economic gain. Okay, so in order to make their economic gain, they conduct certain services, they deliver like a certain products. Like for example, whenever we go to market and we try buying maybe a piece of electronics, maybe a piece of garment, cloth, right? Or if you are going to any eatery, we are having our lunch, dinner at some nice place, right? So those are all actually some sort of actually fulfillment of like a human needs, and somebody is taking it up as an industrial activity. Okay, so this industrial activities together of various sectors, like sectors we are aware of, agricultural is one like a very traditional, conventional, old like an industrial sector. Well, not particularly industry we call it, but now it is also a kind of a sector under economic. Okay, so under economics, agriculture, perhaps you can call it as a like a first one, because agriculture is with us, with the humanity for a long time, like from the period we started, we learned like humans learned how to grow crops and make it as a like cyclic like activity around the year, and they made their food security. Okay, then comes like industries, like a manufacturing industries, service industries, like aviation, railways, like a textiles, garments, all of them combined. If you metals, like electronics, electrical, all of those combined, they are the different like you can call it as like a sectors. Like manufacturing is a one sector, construction is another sector, right? Infrastructure, planning, civil engineering, these are like another sector where they go for maybe laying of the roads and bridges, railway lines, etc, etc. So these actually activities together they boost the economy, right? So this term was adopted, you can see over here, economic growth of sectors across the economy, right, spearheaded by industries. Now let's see, by the early 90s, the definition of development had shifted once more to include social and human factors. Okay, so from here if you see, this is not just like industries, a little more than that, in addition to the meaning of economic growth. So of course economic growth was there, this you can say that it came like a first, because from here this whole like a development term actually started coming into the being, and then social and human factors, right? These two things, also got, like added. What happened next? Parallel to the development of society, the concept of development has gradually been perfected, including economic growth, economic structural advancement, and social progress. So, more, like elaborate, like a points, more, like a inclusive, covering, like a number of things, the activities which help to the economic growth, activities which help like economic, structural, like abilities to grow and advance over time, right? Of course, the social progress, which includes like community, like and society and all of that. Lastly, development may be defined as the process of implementing economic restructuring to give people a better living environment and social benefits. So now if you see, this became a kind of, like a thoroughly, like a refined, like a term, at this stage. It's a process of implementing economic restructuring. So how do you restructure your economics? Because economics, may be going on its own, but it needs, some channelization, some orientation, some focus, right? So that restructuring, why that restructuring and what sort of that restructuring, which gives people a better living environment and social benefits. Okay, so with this intention, if you drive your economy, this becomes like a development. So this is the like a last like a definition of development, like this term, because if you see these terms and their meanings, they evolve over time. If you open the dictionary and see like any word, their usages, and most of these words, they have evolved over time. In terms of their uses, if you see, you can check on the like internet, what kind of a trend has been there for using a particular word. Okay, sometimes maybe it is low, then suddenly it peaks, then again it may go down, then again it may peak and may come down, or maybe it can go. Okay, so this also is possible with the reference of like a time and like usages. Okay, and similarly the meaning part of it. So the meaning also keeps on evolving, like sustainability word, if you see. So sustainability word is a dynamic concept. The definition of sustainability is still not frozen. It is evolving. How sustainability term was used 100 years back. Okay, well, there was no like a scenarios which we are having in today's time, this like a particular year, right? So understanding a particular like a word like sustainability was through different like a context altogether. Okay, so this was so critical. Climate change wasn't like that like bad at that time, like 100 years back and all that. So understanding of sustainability word was like a little like different, but over the time it has evolved. Okay, so we'll see what is sustainable development. So here, well, along with the development word, like how it evolved. Meanwhile, the term sustainable development appeared later, first appearing in the World Conservation Strategy in 1980. However, at the time, sustainable development was used to refer to ecological sustainability, to argue for the conservation of biological resources. So if you see like how it has evolved, how it has evolved has a lot to do, like how this industrialization and all of these, like regions which are behind this climate change and as a big phenomena started taking shape. Okay, so the first impact, like a felt was on the biological resources. Okay, and this is where it gets its like a reference, from the biological resources. So what was the task? Conservation of biological resources, because biological resources were started like getting depleted, getting lost, getting like damaged, getting bruised, like abused, and all of those kind of things started happening for animal kingdom, like plant kingdom, like water, air, like even soil, right? So those like living, non-living, like entities, as they started degrading, there was a call to conserve, right? To conserve them, and that was directly related to the ecological sustainability, because we want these like things to continue. We do not want to like spoil and like hinder the balance of like these things. Because if we like we are all aware, if we tinker permanently with the balance of these things, the living conditions on this planet are going to change. Why there is so much of hue and cry to safeguard these things is because if those are permanently damaged and bruised and like a kind of abused, okay, that is going to create a permanent imbalance in living conditions. Okay, and since we do not have like another planet, another home, okay, so it's like we are destroying our own home, and all our like humanity, including all other living beings, from all like a species, will come to a very threatening situation. Their existence is going to get threatened. So that is the kind of criticality like we are talking about, and this led to like a evolution of this term, sustainable development. So you see how it like it started taking shape from the year 1980. Next, sustainable development was officially published in 1987. I think that you already know, in the Brundtland report of the World Commission on Environment and Development, WCET. Sustainable development is defined as development that satisfies current demands. I think this is a universal definition as of now, without compromising the future generations' ability to meet their own needs. Okay, straightforward. The reference is coming from like this conservation like a term of biological plus many other things like a society, like economics, all of that. So we know like there are three aspects of like a sustainability, right? So ESEs. So conservation of all of them. It's not that the technology evolves so much, and there are still humans who are unable to feed and like put on clothes on their body, right? So that's a very kind of like a contrasting and paradoxical situation where this whole development is leading. If you are not able to feed like our own brothers and sisters, right? So that is the situation where it becomes like a comprehensive, wholesome approach to conserve all of those like things and entities for today as well as for the tomorrow's generations. So that's what it says, for the future generations' ability to meet their own needs, right? So I hope this is clear now. Let me move forward. Until the Rio de Janeiro Earth Summit in 1992 and the Johannesburg Summit in 2002, sustainable development was affirmed and generalized on three dimensions, which you already know: economic development, social development, and environmental protection. Next point, the United Nations has adopted 17 Sustainable Development Goals composed of 169 specific goals and 232 targets aimed at eradicating poverty, protecting the environment, and ensuring that all people live in peace and prosperity by 2030. So here with this fourth point, the premise of SDGs came into the existence, because we are living like during this time frame. These 17 SDG goals are meant for application implementation during like this period, right? So we have reached somewhere like here, right? 2023 we have just entered, right? Somewhere here, and still there are 7 like a good years to go for it. Okay, so during this period, whatever the premise and objective and the context like is decided by the UN SDGs, that has become the defining like an element for like this term. What do we mean by sustainable development? So you see like there are 17 like goals, as emphasized, 169 specific goals inside that, and like a 232 like targets and indicators. Okay, 169 actually targets and 232 indicators. So that's how it is progressing, and I'm pretty sure in 2030 and onwards, it's going to include even more things perhaps, and we will see a new evolved like a definition of sustainability or sustainable development. So what are the major differences, as you might ask? Let's see them like a point by point. So the first one, while the economy and society is the pillar of development, we saw initially, okay, for development, sustainable development is a close and harmonious mix of socio-economic and environmental development. Okay, So not just economy and society, which we saw under the term development, okay, but including environment also, those three like a ESE aspects, then it becomes like a sustainable development. Okay, so this is the first difference. Second, material wealth commodities are at the heart of the development paradigm. So we saw initially like producing goods, like meeting the demands, providing services. So that is to fulfill like a human needs and all. Okay, so that is at the like heart of the development, simple development. But sustainable development is people centric. Okay, well, here also you are like fulfilling the demands and all, but those are most like a material demands. But humans like needs are even like a there are many things which are like beyond material demands also, like for example like our whole sustenance in the future, right? Psychological demands, like a psychological like a like a happiness, mental well-being, physical well-being, all of those things. If you see the well-being of the environment, well-being of the entire communities, the people from all the strata, right? So all of those things then it came into the like a picture, and that became like a people centric, then it became SD. Third point, natural resources are the basic condition for development. Okay, you exploit natural resources because from this is where we are meeting and fulfilling all our like requirements, right? Human resources are the basic condition for sustainable development. So here not just the natural resources like minerals, ores, and like agriculture, and all of these things we are like exploiting from the nature, but human resources also. What about like the capabilities and potential we all carry, right? In what ways we can utilize that and like make use of it to improve the like existing scenario, right? So one of the most wonderful like things in this like a world what we know as of like today is the human brain, right? And human brain's potential. So that is like a human resource. Like you may be aware, our Ministry of Education, Government of India, used to be known as Ministry of Human Resource, like a Development, MHRD earlier. Okay, so here if you see, it's not just education, because education still you can call it as a like one aspect of the human resource, but there could be like many other things. Well, why this was done? Of course, to make it very generic, at the global level and all of that, because other countries actually follow this MOE term. Okay, to make it kind of like a generic bus this thing, but I see as a intention and as a inherent like a meaning what is embedded in this like a MHRD term was, I think like a far greater. So I hope you can understand now like what do we mean by human resource and how it can be capitalized for the like a growth of like a sustainable development. Lastly, development in connection with the environment is oriented towards exploitation and reclamation. Like what do we do with the nature? Like how this whole climate change has happened as a like one like a global phenomena now is because of like this over exploitation and reclamation, right? Whereas sustainable development is oriented towards conservation and reasonable use. Okay, so that is the strongest like a difference between D and SD. Okay, so here we want to utilize it, but at the same time we want to conserve it also. We do not want it to like just exhausted and then there is nothing like or zero amount of like something is available tomorrow. No, not that situation we want, right? So we want to conserve it also, we want to replenish it also, we want to like recycle it, we want to like put all of those like R's for use, and we want to keep it for future generations uses also, and reasonable uses, not over exploitation, and mainly not exploitation also, because exploitation is a word which has some negative connotation to it, right? So we should not actually take any like a such thing with like such a negative like a connotation. We should go with the positive connotation. So this word, this term, if you see, reasonable uses, is definitely a fairly kind of like a positive like an intention word. So that is there in the intent of like sustainable development, and this is why we need this format of development, which is sustainable development. Some more definitions for your understanding, since in this module we are trying to understand it deeply, what is the difference between D and SD. So growth, advancement, positive change, or the addition of physical, Economic, environmental, social and demographic components are all products of development. The goal of development is to raise the standard of living for the populace while protecting the environment's resources and creating or expanding job opportunities locally and regionally. Development involves a change in the quality of something as well as the setting up of circumstances that will allow that change to continue in the future. The term development has undergone several meanings and emphases over the years from experts and numerous academicians. This strategy serves as the foundation for the UN Development Programme (UNDP). If you have visited, like Indian villages and towns, okay, you may have seen, like those bulky, like a big size, like a water actually, like these pumps, these hand pumps. Okay, so there is a very interesting, like a story, for these. Like earlier, the regular, like household, like pumps, used to go, like a little shallow in the, like a ground. Okay, maybe, like a 50 feet or like a, typically like that. Okay, I'm talking about like most of the places across India. Well, it varies, upon conditions of water table, in your particular area. Okay, so what used to happen, earlier in the sanitation, people used to kind of, like go for soak pits, right, or septic tanks and things like that. And there used to be, like some like like exhaust which used to go into the soil, right, and it usually typically like used to travel and get like a contaminating this water supply through these like a typical like a household like a hand pumps, and used to cause different like a water related like diseases, right, and a good number of people used to like a fall sick and contract diarrhea and all of those kind of medical situations. Okay, a lot of people used to die also, right? But with this UNDP initiative in during that period, like lakhs and lakhs of like this like a deep like a underground these boreholes were made, and these like big size hand pumps were installed, which were quite efficient. Okay, which went relative to this quite deeper. Okay, and brought like uncontaminated like a fresh like a potable water from like this like a deeper like a like a pockets under the like a soil under the surface. Okay, and they used to serve. So this became like a huge success, and that contributed a lot in saving these like health like issues from that time. Well, over the years, if you see, water supply, like infrastructure has been like improved. Now there are almost like every town or city or village, like they have, like a piped, water supply, from those big overhead tanks, right? We all know. And now actually this problem is kind of more or less, like a solved. Perhaps, like the government of India and all of the state governments had worked, to improve this situation over the years. And now actually we are in a different like a phase altogether. But if you see as an initiative, this has been a really like a boon kind of thing for majority of the rural India, right? So how like such initiatives have helped over the years for the cause of like a sustainable development is really like amazing kind of journey to see. 1990 HDI Human Development Index, which was created to quantify development in the area of gender. This researcher created the abilities to approach and placed a strong emphasis on the empowerment of women as a vehicle for development. So another factor, if you see, empowerment of women. So there is a criteria, like how to judge, something which is, like a successful or, unsuccessful, or maybe at a scale of maybe, 1 to 10 or 0 to 10, where do you place it? Like, how successful maybe some scheme is. Okay. And if you want to judge, like a development itself, okay, so there are like several things as a kind of a parameters. In that, even empowerment of women, was introduced as one of the like a criteria, right? Which is really like a amazing to like a see, and it has contributed a lot over the years to help women in the society. Well, the condition has still not reached to the like a desired level, but at least it is improving. Okay, just to define, like a types of development, there are, there could be many. Okay, so development is a generic term also, but what we mean development is in the terms of, like a material growth, like a societal growth, infrastructural growth and all of that. But it can mean in the various other domains also, like development as a, the cognitive development, like human brain, right? We know like a carries a, like a huge potential, right? So how, one can, like help and become a, like a good, like a human resource over the year, okay, in his life, and contribute to the society, right? So, helping, like somebody, with the skills, with the set of like a required, like a knowledge and other resources. So that's a cognitive, like a development. Moral development, okay, because well, everything cannot be, policed, or the law and order cannot be implemented to, every person. There can't be a police, for, running behind every human, every, like a citizen of the, like a country. But if there is a kind of a good moral development, you can expect a fairly, reasonable, like a behavior and response from the, like a community in the society, right? So that's moral development. Emotional development, how are we able to, like deal with the, like ups and downs in life and many other challenges which we at a daily basis we encounter. Physical development, like a bodily development and other, like a things, physical in terms of human body, physical in terms of infrastructure also perhaps. Language development, social development. So development can be of, like a multiple types. We'll see briefly social development. The goal of social development theory is to explain qualitative alternatives in society's framework and structure that aid in the achievement of its goals and objectives. So respect to the, like a social, like a society as a entity, framework and structure that aid in achievement of its goals and objectives, right? So that's social development. Development may be described as an upward rising movement with a higher degree of vigor, efficiency, quality, productivity, complexity, comprehension, creativity, mastery, enjoyment, and accomplishment that is relevant to all civilizations at all historical junctures. Development is a social transformation process, not only a collection of policies and programs put in place to achieve a certain goal. The previous 5 centuries have seen an increase in the speed and intensity of this process, and the last 5 decades have seen a notable acceleration. So if you see like a social development over the years, this has been very kind of, like a slowly evolving. Then middle ages came, and then like in the modern ages came. Now it is kind of, like accelerating, very fast. So the social development also, if you see, this is you can call maybe, like a the last few, like a century, like 5 centuries it is talking about, how this has been in the last 5 decades, like how it has been. So very fast, like accelerated, place of, like a growth and development. And previously you can qualify as like, like a older, like a times, where this has been more or less, like a static, okay, and then it started taking a, like a big change. SD basically merges economics and environmental science both in theoretical and practical perspectives. Several other articulations consider sustainable development as a process of development by which various environmental, economic and social benefits can be simultaneously and concurrently maximized. So it's not like, like you give priority to one over the other or maybe third, right? But you can do it simultaneously, or beautifully you can do it concurrently, like all at the same time. Okay? So that is the, like a beauty of it. It can be as a subset. Well, of course the environment comes, like at the outer level. Social can be at the one level, then economics can be at the inner level, or maybe you can go for like this kind of approach also, where there are, all three, like coming together and overlapping, right? So you may have seen these, this diagram also perhaps. Okay, so it depends on the approach what you can take. So it can be simultaneous, it can be cyclic, it can be concurrent also, with the intention to maximize the, efficiency. These articulations suggest that sustainable development, in short, is a blend of economic, social, and ecological approaches, each of these being indispensable and complementary to each other. Okay, so they actually, complement each other, they help each other, they compensate each other. Okay. SD is in fact a pattern of resource use that aims to meet human needs while preserving the environment, so that these needs can be met not only for the present generation but also for the generations to come. That Brundtland definition, right? Sustainable development is a socio-ecological process characterized by the fulfillment of human needs while maintaining the quality of the natural environment indefinitely. The linkage between environment and development was globally recognized in 1980 when the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, you may have seen or maybe heard about this organization, you can search for it separately, published the World Conservation Strategy and used the term sustainable development. So this was the one official organization which coined like this term. This term has been used as a unifying theme in presenting environmental and social concerns about worrisome trends towards sexual-related environment degradation and social polarization. In the 1970s and 80s, the concept came into general usage after the Brundtland Commission report 1987, formerly called the Report of the World Commission on Environment, Aid Development (WCED). It was set up by the United Nations General Assembly. Thus, the term SD was widely adopted by mainstream development agencies following the publication in 1987 of Our Common Future. So that's the title of like this report by the World Commission on Environmental and Development (WCED), chaired by the then Prime Minister of Norway, and she was like a Gro Harlem Brundtland. It stated that sustainable development is development that meets the needs of the present generation. Yeah. It is now considered to be one of the most widely recognized definitions. As we can notice, it contains within it two key concepts. So Brundtland definition, if you see, is presently the prevailing like a definition of a sustainable development. Okay, what do we mean by it? Maybe you can separately search for that document. That's easily like available over internet or in your library. Okay, Our Common Future, and you can go in detail. You will really see like how amazingly they tried covering a lot of elements, and the scope of like this SD has actually widened from that time and onwards. Okay, and even till today like that like a definition is prevailing. So that's the kind of, you can say, the like a rigorous and inclusive like that definition is, that it is prevailing even today. So the two key concepts of that are the concept of needs, in particular the essential needs of the world's poor, to which overriding priority should be given. So if you see needs, and in that also essential needs, because previously we saw like there is definitely the differentiation between need and greed. If you see that's the kind of like a distinction you can understand over here. Definitely we need things, but do we really need things? Okay, so if you really make a proper judgment of making a purchase, before making a purchase or before availing a service, okay, definitely you can we will be able to answer it like to the majority of its extents. Okay, so the self evaluation is the first like step towards contributing towards sustainability. For example, if I want to buy a pen, right, so do I really need this pen? Okay, I have to introspect. This decision should not be based on the impulse, or maybe the appeal of this pen, or maybe some offer which is going on on the sale of this pen or something like that, or maybe the company or the brand or anything, right? It should be purely based on the actual need. Okay, so this is what the difference between just like a requirement, a need, and an essential need. Okay, so we must understand after like this course of the world's poor, because this is the like a group which has like the most like a crucial need for like the resources. They are the people who have like who doesn't have like a things. Okay, things include like a lot of things. Okay, like previously we have discussed in the like a first and second SDG. Okay, like how the scarcity of resources by like a virtue of being someone like poor, belonging to a poor family, poor household, leads them to a very miserable life, right? They are unable to even like get the like a fundamental like a things or basic commodities in their life. So those are the challenges we need to like meet first. Okay, so those are the challenges should be given like an overriding priority. Okay, so how noble like this cause is, really I appreciate like this like this concern. And the second key point, the idea of limitations imposed by the state-of-art technology and social organization on the environment's ability to meet present and future needs. So here the factor comes towards like environment's ability. Like we know, like environment, if you see like water bodies, like even the like a sky, air, like the earth itself, they have their own healing capacities. If you throw maybe like some pollutant in maybe a river, Okay, definitely for that immediate movement, that particular like a water is going to like get polluted, and it may not be fit for consumption or usage of like n time and types, right? But if you allow some time, the water body itself is going to take care of that pollutant and it will heal. So nature's like elements, they have their own healing capacities, own healing capabilities, right? But what happens, the rate at which we are damaging these like things is exceeding the rate at which it can heal itself. Okay, so understand the damage at the rate what it is happening, and that the rate at which it can like heal itself. Okay, so if this is greater, okay, definitely it will be a positive thing and the element is going to heal itself. But if damage is greater, if this side it is greater, okay, then this healing capacity is going to fall short at the rate at which like damages are being caused, and there will be a surplus of like a damage. Okay, so that is the negative like a situation we want to avoid. Okay, so that is what is there in this like a key concept in this second point. Okay, the idea of limitation, because if you see, of course all of these like natural elements, they have their threshold, at what level they will be able to like heal themselves, right? So that threshold we must not actually kind of like cross, right? So that is the like a warning you can understand from this. So the idea of limitations for environment's ability to meet present as well as future needs, because if it is damaged, okay, definitely we will be falling short for like today's need also, and certainly for tomorrow's like a future generations also, right? So that is the situation we do not want. That's why we need ST. Okay, further, United Nations 2005 World Summit Outcome Document refers to economic development, social development and environmental protection as the interdependent and mutually reinforcing pillars. So three major pillars, and together they are sustaining SD. Many definitions and images, visualizing sustainability we saw in the previous slides, these overlaps or maybe like a subsetting and all of that. So SD may coexist, so they all can happen at the same time. It is perfectly all right. Broadly defined, the SD development mantra enjoins current generations to take a system approach to growth and development, and to manage natural, produced and social capital for the welfare of their own and future generations. So, well, if you come from a background of design or something, you may be aware of what is like a systems approach. But briefly, I'll tell for everyone else. Well, systemic approach is a kind of like an interdependent approach where number of stakeholders are involved and they together collectively making that system run. For example, solar system, very very simple like an example. We know there is a like a sun star in the center, and then there are like a planets like revolving around it, as far as like Neptune and Uranus, right? And Jupiter and Earth and Mars and Mercury and like Venus, right? So it's a kind of a system which is governed by the massive gravitational pull of sun, our like own star, okay, and they are all revolving, and this perfect distances between them, these planets is keeping them like at a balanced distance, okay. And Earth particularly, if you see, if this is the like orbit of our Earth, okay, so it is so perfectly located that it is not so close to get like too much of heat, or it is not too farther also to become like a very cold, okay. It is such a like a distance, it is less, it's such a kind of like a sweet spot it is placed like that has allowed life to evolve. Otherwise there is like we know about our solar system, none of the other planets have like at least we know like till date there is no life found on any other planet, or for example any other like star systems like till date we do not know, okay. Well, cohesive life conditions may exist, there are some evidences that some planets have like beyond solar system, they have kind of a supportive life like a life supporting like a conditions, but life itself is still, like a not, we are not able to find it. Okay, so that's a system, where, all of these things are, like interrelated. Even the existence of, like a Jupiter, Saturn is also crucial for the survival of Earth. If you know, it is very nice. If you do not know, I'll tell you, like a Jupiter being, like, one of the, like a biggest, like a planet inside the solar system. Okay, it attracts, majority of the comets and asteroids and, like those, like a wandering, like objects which, accidentally come into the, like a solar system, and that prevents, like Earth, getting hit by those, right? So you see, even though we do not directly owe, like anything to Jupiter, but its presence in our solar system is also a boon, right? So you see, like how it is, interdependent. Okay, yeah, if you remove, the like Jupiter, from solar system, things are going to go haywire. Okay, and life itself will come to, kind of a threatening situation, right, on this planet. So it's a system, where each and every stakeholder, all the, like planets, our sun, even the, these asteroids and all those things, satellites, they play, like a crucial role. Similarly, in our day-to-day life also, things are interdependent, and mutually they are working together. Okay, like railways, if you see. Okay, so there are, like railway tracks, thousands and thousands of kilometers. Okay, then there are railway stations, like trains, like thousands and lakhs of people who are working, to enable railways to function, right? So if you see, they are all the major, like stakeholders, right? And together they are enabling this system to run. If one of them goes, malfunctions or something goes wrong, the entire system will come to a halt, right? So this is the, beauty of, like systems approach. And similarly, now I'm coming to SD. Why do we need this? Because if our development, the present form of development, is causing, imbalance in the ecology or in like a social structure, okay, it's going to create an imbalance which we cannot sustain, which we cannot kind of, like prevail over. Okay, and that's why we need a systemic approach to control those things. Okay, so I hope it is clear by now. Now let me give you some building blocks of sustainability. What are those? Agenda 21, an action plan of the UN related to SD, clearly identified information, integration and participation as key building blocks to help countries achieve development that recognizes these interdependent pillars, ESEs, and cultural development. It emphasizes that in SD, everyone is a user and provider of information. So it's like a feedback loop, right? You know what is feedback loop. So feedback loop, there is a kind of, like resources and inputs, which go, okay, and then there is, like a backtracking of, like information from that side to again improve or improvise or correct or all of this. Then again it goes, then again it comes back, then again it goes, again it comes back. So that's a feedback loop. So this, like entities like information, integration and participation, are the integral, like building blocks, because through this we know what to do, where to do, how to do, all of those kind of things. It stresses the need to change from old sector-centered ways of doing business to new approaches that involve cross-sectoral coordination and the integration of environmental and social concerns into all development processes. Furthermore, Agenda 21 emphasizes that broad public participation in decision making is a fundamental prerequisite for achieving SD. According to this researcher, sustainability is a process which tells of a development of all aspects of human life affecting sustenance. It means it needs to resolve the conflict between various competing goals. It involves the simultaneous pursuit of economic prosperity, environmental quality and social equity, famously known as the three dimensions, like three aspects. Okay. Then we have green development and SD. What are these? Green development is generally differentiated from SD in the sense that former prioritizes what is proponents consider to be environmental sustainability. So if it is green development, it addresses environmental issues as the primary or perhaps whole soul, like a driving agent, driving, like a force. over economic and cultural consideration or social consideration, which are part of the ST, right? So this is the difference. I hope you know that already. On the other hand, proponents of SD argue that it requires a context which is to improve overall sustainability, where cutting edge green development is unattainable. For example, a cutting edge treatment plant with extremely high maintenance cost may not be sustainable in regions of the world with fewer financial resources, right? So, well, green development is a nice approach, but unless and until it is supported by the other, like one example you saw here, economics. Okay, like if there is no funding, okay, how are you going to take up like that green development initiative? That becomes like a problematic, right? So green development is nice, but we need like all the three aspects, ESEs. Environmentally ideal plant that is shut down due to bankruptcy is obviously less sustainable than the one that is maintainable by a community, even if it is somewhat less effective from an environmental standpoint. So it's a kind of like a negotiation, you can say. Even if some entity is not 100% environmentally like a conscious or responsive, okay, but still you will like going ahead with this, because if economics is not sustaining in an 100% environmentally friendly solution, okay, it is not sustainable financially to take that idea ahead, okay. So it should like respond to all three. Various writers have commented on the population control agenda that seems to underlie the concept of sustainable development. This writer actually suggests sustainability is a policy approach that has gained quite a lot of popularity in recent years, especially in international circles, by attaching a specific interpretation to sustainability. Population control policies have become overriding approach to development, thus becoming the primary tool used to promote economic development in developing countries and to protect the environment. So, this bubble we have been talking about: environment, society and economy. Okay, at the cusp of these two we have equitable solutions. Here we have bearable solutions, here we have viable solutions, together we have SD solutions. Okay, so at a cusp where all these three together meet, we get SD. Yeah, capacity is necessary for SD. Capacity to promote equity, adapt, transform, link knowledge with action, govern and measure. Okay, so these are like a capacities. Okay, so this triangle of sustainability, what we saw over here, okay, is a similar kind of like a diagram where we get in this sustainable area, and then we have at these like a junctures like these trade-offs. So it's a trade-off between these two, socio and ecological here, economic and ecological over here, social and economic over here. Okay, so it's a trade-off, like initially we discussed. If a solution is 100% green, okay, but if it is 0% economical, then combined result is 0. Okay, so we need like some trade-off. Okay, so that is this trade-off we are talking about over here. This trade-off happens between these two together in this juncture. That's where we call it ST, where we take care of human well-being. We maintain our manufactured capital and natural capital also. Okay, for what? For people, for dignity, prosperity, justice, partnership, planet. Okay, which covers majorly in a nutshell everything and anything around us, around this planet and this whole ecosystem, this whole ecological balance, that becomes ST. So with this we have come to the end of this lecture. Thank you all.